Welcome to your Israel lesson. We have several main ideas for Israel. The first is that Israel is a part of the Eastern Mediterranean region, which is a region with very distinct physical features. Number two is that Israel is known as the Holy Land. Number three is that many different groups have claims to land in Israel today, which has led to many different issues. And number four is that Israel, the nation, was created after World War II, but is currently divided into different regions due to violence. First, let's take a look at physical geography. Here we have two different maps of Israel. One of them, the one on the left, is a political map. We can see that Israel, in the yellow, is surrounded by Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Turkey is up a little further to the north. Israel also has a long border on the Mediterranean Sea. Israel, the country, is actually quite tiny, and it is divided into several different regions. If we look at the physical map on the right, we can see that many deserts surround Israel, and there is a region of highlands running through the country. But along the Mediterranean coast, you're going to see very flat, very lush plains. This is very characteristic of the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, Israel today is one of the most coveted pieces of land, and it is so coveted because it is known as the Holy Land. Israel is the sacred site for Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And we can see from the pictures here that there are many important religious sites located within the country of Israel. We have the Western Wall, which is very important to Judaism. We have the Dome on the Rock, and we have the Shrine of the Holy Sepulchre, just to name a few. Now, the issue is that many different groups have claims to this land because many different groups have controlled this land. The Israelites were the first people to establish the Kingdom of Israel in this region in 1000 BC, but at that time, the piece of land was known as Canaan. We can see Canaan marked on the map on top in the red. Now, the Israelites are just early Jews. They believed that God gave them the land of Canaan and that they had rightful ownership of the land because it was given to them by God. The kingdom was very troubled, though, because many different groups tried to conquer them and push them off their land. For example, the Babylonians completely exiled the Israelites, and they left and went into Egypt after taking over Canaan around 600 BC. The Persians, about 100 years later, around 500 BC, took over the region and allowed the Israelites back. But there is an issue. In that 100-year period of time, the region became populated with many different ethnic groups, even though when the Israelites arrived back, they believed that that land was still rightfully theirs. So eventually, over a couple hundred years, Rome took over the region. That's what Rome did. They take over things. So Rome conquered this entire Eastern Mediterranean region. We can see the Roman Empire marked in red on the map below. Right? During the Roman period, we know of a young Jewish man named Jesus who lived in this region, and he started to preach messages that contradicted Jewish teachings and greatly offended Roman laws. So the Roman government had him crucified. And we know Jesus Christ's story, and we also know that a religion formed around him. Right? The new religion was called Christianity. So Christianity was born in this area that we know as, well, that they knew as Canaan, but that we know as Israel. Now, throughout the Roman Empire, we know that it lasted a very long time, and now we have Christians as well as Jews living in this area, and nobody really liked the Romans, especially the Jews. Nobody liked the fact that they were under Roman rule, so the Jews began to revolt. Now, as the Jews began to revolt, the Romans got pretty upset that they were disturbing the peace, so the Romans forced them to leave the region and renamed the region Palestine. Alright, so the Romans are forcing the Jews out of their homeland. They call the region Palestine, so Canaan is no more. But where did these Jews go? They went everywhere. The Jews completely dispersed all around the world. And that is why this is called, the dispersal of Jews is called the diaspora. Alright, so the diaspora diaspora happened when the Romans kicked the Jews out of Canaan and they renamed the area Palestine. Unfortunately, people were not finished conquering the Holy Land. Muslims started conquering Palestine in the mid-600s AD after the Roman Empire fell, and this region became very important to Islamic culture as well. So now we have several different groups centered in this area. We have Christians, we have Jews, and we have Muslims, all completely trying to dominate the Holy Land. Now, we have the Muslims taking control of the Holy Land around 600 AD. Now, the Christians living in Europe did not really approve of this fact. During the Middle Ages in Europe, Christians grew frustrated that Muslims had control over Jerusalem, which was the main city in the Holy Land. So the Christian Europeans began to launch the Crusades. We can see the Crusaders up here in the picture in the corner with their little swords and their little shields on their horses and their armor. And what they did is they marched from their homes in Europe all the way to the Holy Land to fight the Muslims and try to take back Jerusalem. All right? So Crusades are just a series of violent invasions of Palestine in which the Christians tried to take back the Holy Land. Now, some of the Crusades worked, some of them didn't, but Palestine, the region, including Jerusalem, eventually became a part of the Ottoman Empire. We know that the Ottoman Empire was a predominantly Muslim empire. Well, we also know that the Ottoman Empire grew very, very large and was involved in World War I. Unfortunately, it was on the losing side of World War I. Here we have the Ottoman Empire. And unfortunately, it was on the losing side of World War I. And so the countries that lost World War I had their empires completely divided. So after World War I, the British took control of this area known as Palestine. All right, so Palestine is now under British control after World War I. But the nation of Israel wasn't created until after World War II. Many Muslims lived in Palestine because it was once part of the Ottoman Empire, but in the 1800s, a movement called Zionism called for Jews to establish a Jewish state in their ancient homeland. So in this region known as Palestine, we have many Muslims living there, but Jews started to flock into the country because of this movement of Zionism. So we have Muslims and Jews living in the same area at the same time again. In 1947, the United Nations finally agreed to divide Palestine into Jewish and Arab states. So we can see in this second map right here that the white are the Jewish states and the green are the Muslim states or the Arab states. The white was known as Israel and the green areas were known as Palestine. Right? The Arab countries around Israel and Palestine did not like this idea, but the Jewish people living there absolutely loved it. In 1948, the nation of Israel was officially established, but a couple days after the nation of Israel was established, Arab nations started to attack Israel to defend the Palestinian Arabs. Right? So since 1948, there have been heated debates and violent wars fought over who should have which portions of land. Eventually, Israel evolved to look like this, mostly Jewish state with some Palestinian lands. All right, so here's the nation of Israel. Israel, the area in the white, has several important cities like Haifa and Tel Aviv, and it has a very long coast on the Mediterranean, and it takes up most of that former region. Here we have the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip is one of those regions occupied under control of the Palestinian authorities. It is located on the Mediterranean Sea and is home to more than 1 million Palestinians, although there is considerable violence happening in the Gaza Strip today. Here we have the West Bank. The West Bank is another region under Palestinian control. And we call it the West Bank because it refers to the region on the western bank of the Dead Sea. It's home to around 2.4 million Palestinians, but Israelis have recently begun moving into the West Bank, forcing cooperation between the two groups, right? And as we can see, the West Bank is heavily, heavily guarded. Now, the issue with the West Bank is that the city of Jerusalem is located right in the middle of it. Right? And Jerusalem is one of those regions that is divided. Jerusalem is one of the most important cities in this region because of its holy significance. The Palestinians have control over eastern Jerusalem, while the Jews have control over western Jerusalem. Right? So that's the information that we need to know about Israel. Now, you can look through your book if you need to, but you should go to the journal, the Israel Journal on Moodle, and complete those questions before class tomorrow. Bye!